anyways, so Bryan, you're the father of twin autistic children, son and daughter, and they're both in kindergarten.
Yeah.
You have a limited, as far as, your children are just barely starting, but as you're listening to, to the experiences, that we've expressed as far as having, compared to, what you're observing, with your children, how would you compare, what's happening now with your children, compared to what's happened with the members of this group?
Well, I think obviously one of the big differences is earlier and earlier age of diagnosis. So as we've gone through some of the stories here, Philip is one of the, I think, younger individuals in the room. I don't know, maybe contemporary with Sam, but
right. Yes, about contemporary with me.
Diagnosed at quite a young age, as opposed to later life diagnosis for the rest of you guys. Our kids were diagnosed shy of their second birthday, so they were diagnosed, I think, at about age 18 months or something like that.
Right.
So we had, quote unquote, the advantage of an early diagnosis, which then led to its own issues because, it's one thing to have a diagnosis, but then to get access to the services that are currently being touted as what's, the best for helping a kid with a developmental disability. So, we were fortunate. In retrospect, at the time I didn't know we were as fortunate as we were, but later came to the realization that we were fortunate. We were able to get our kids into what's called an early intensive intervention program, which there's a fair amount of evidence now in the medical literature that the best chance for optimal outcomes from an educational standpoint for individuals on the spectrum is to get them into an early intensive behavioral intervention program to help them develop communication skills at an earlier age, which hopefully will allow them to succeed better academically. And it's not just communication skills, the language and speech problems that are common amongst kids on the spectrum, also teaching them social skills, or at least holding that program at SARC, the Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center here in the Valley. And they've got what they refer to as their community school program, which in essence is kind of like a daycare. They have, I think, 3 different age levels now, so it's sort of toddler class, I forget what the second stage is, and then pre-K. And then our kids went through all 3 years of that after they were diagnosed. And I think it did help our kids develop, good functional language skills. My daughter is, if anything, probably precocious in terms of her language now. My son struggles still with some aspects of language. He tends to script a lot, talk about things that are unrelated to what other people are talking about. He'll just come in and start saying something from whatever he's thinking about, or whatever last favorite movie he saw that he wants to talk about. But he can speak, and he can respond appropriately if you get his attention and that sort of thing.
Right.
But that community school program at SARC, which is not truly a school, it's in essence it's therapy. It's intensive therapy. The quote unquote teachers, which I think it's like for every 12 students that are in the community school, there are literally 6 quote unquote teachers that are in the room with them, and they're actually what are called they're therapists, and they're being supervised by someone who's a BCBA, which has to do with ABA. If you want to, I don't know if we want to get in the whole discussion about ABA, but it's a type of therapy that's designed to help kids with disabilities learn some of these skills.
Yeah, well, I think it is important to note because and you're right. We don't want to get into prolonged debates over controversial issues. But as far as you said that when you started with SARC, that they showed you a video. They compared the old ABA to what's now referred to as the new ABA. And as I listened to a number of autistic self-advocates who are also professionals, and when they talk about what's wrong with the ABA, they're talking about the old ABA. And when they talk about what should be done, it sounds like they're talking about the new ABA. And so and I don't know enough about, because I'm not a professional, but it does sound like, to me that there has been progress as far as, whether or not anybody is willing to admit that there's been progress, and I'm talking about both sides of the fence here, not just the advocates, but also the, the professionals, but there has been progress in recognizing, that there needed to be some adjustments in the program, and that some of these adjustments have been made, and so a lot of the grievances, that are now being expressed by the autistic self-advocacy, which I am, an autistic self-advocate, but nevertheless, a lot of my fellow autistic self-advocates, some of these issues may actually be a bit outdated. Maybe not all of them, but at least some of them, and I really think that's important for, to recognize that at least there has been some progress in this controversial situation, because we need, because there is too much strife, and I definitely have made some strong stands myself, which some people don't appreciate, but in any case, we do need to focus on where we have made progress, right. And that's one thing that I am not hearing either side of the self-advocates versus others, and we're not going to, there's lots of others, different categories of others, but anyways, but it is important to recognize that there has been some progress, particularly in the ABA, just by what you're describing, and comparing it to what the autistic self-advocates, are saying, it does, to me sound like there has been some progress and it needs to be recognized, so.
Right.
Well, it sounds like you've even had some progress just with your own kids.
Right. The problem, of course, there is I don't know how our kids would have done had we not done that. So right. Maybe they would have done about the same anyway, but I'd like to think that all this time and money that we invested in helping them did end up, helping. I think it did, but who knows, because we don't have any other comparison.
And my thoughts, this doesn't just go towards you, but it would go towards all parents. Your struggles will be hard, no doubt, but never, ever give up on your kids. Mm-hmm. Ever.
Okay. Not planning to, yeah.
And see, what if this would have been the 70s, like in my case, before they even knew about all this stuff, and imagine what you'd be doing with them.
Right.
So, so if you were to, tell us what both your children's greatest strength and greatest weakness is, could you pick one for both?
So for my daughter, she is very open to trying new things. She likes all the little girl stuff that you would expect little girls to be into, princesses and this and that. Mm-hmm. We actually just last night went to the father-daughter prom at this kindergarten that they're both attending. So she loves that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Her problem is that she and I picked this up at a local conference actually held here at this campus. It was the AZA United had a conference, but one of the speakers there talked about a tendency for kids on the spectrum to experience catastrophism. So catastrophism is basically if something doesn't go exactly as expected, then the worst case scenario is of course going to play out. So if she doesn't get to be the line leader in elementary school, which is a little, assignment that you can, every week you get a different assignment. She doesn't get to be the line leader. She'll never ever get to be the line leader again, and she's just,
she's devastated beyond the point that she should.
Even though it's really, and that's one of the things we're working on her with is the difference between little problems, medium-sized problems, and big problems.
Right.
Trying to explain those types of things to her, but she struggles with that.
Okay.
So,
your
so
son?
my son, strengths. He's very detail-oriented. I remember with one of the first videos we had them watch, which was trying to teach them some of their letters. He said something about a car, and I said, "What are you talking about a car?" Because it was in the scene, it was a little toy of a dancing bear, and I'm like, "That's not a big car." And then I realized there was a tiny little car in the background of the scene that he was picking up on. It was like if you didn't like get up and scrutinize the screen, you know, you would see it. So he picks up on everything, but it's also one of his challenges because we're finding that he's very distractible right now in kindergarten. He's got a full-time one-on-one aide to really keep him on task, because otherwise he's looking up in the corner of the room, or he's not really paying attention to what the assignment is, and has to constantly be.
So his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness.
Perhaps. I mean, you know, if he can really hone in on things he's interested in, and you know, like back when a year or two ago, when probably 2 years ago now, when he was really into Thomas the Train, he could name all the different Thomas characters, and there's literally over 100 of them, I think now, and he just knew them all. It was like I could hardly keep up with all this stuff, and I was watching the shows with him, but he couldn't talk about more practical things. It's what he was focused on, and I think the distractibility, the difficulty to focus, whether it's ultimately going to be formally diagnosed as ADHD, which commonly co-occurs with autism spectrum disorders, we don't know yet. That's one of the things we're going to look into. But we're not sure how well he's going to do academically, whereas we think from what we're seeing with our daughter, she's probably going to do just fine in a regular school setting, with probably us, keeping close eye on the whole social dance part of it, which is going to be, I think, what she'll probably struggle more with.
Okay.
But she's doing better there, than we probably would have ever hoped, even going into this. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. So, anything else you'd like to?
If we've got a minute, I guess.
What? Well, they don't come here with a gun to force us out right at 3.
So one of our current dilemmas is really what's going to play out going forward. So they're both in kindergarten now. We went to a private school. It's actually a Lutheran school, because we knew from other families who had gone through SARC's early intervention program, whose kids had graduated out before ours, that this school was quote unquote autism friendly. They would be willing to take on kids with special needs. They would be willing to let aides into the classroom, which some schools don't allow that. Mm-hmm. And so we decided to go there. My wife is having some misgivings about it. For my daughters, primarily because of the religious indoctrination that kind of is part of going to a Lutheran school. Neither me nor my wife are Lutheran, certainly, and so we're hearing all kinds of stuff from our daughter, who kind of picks up on this stuff and comes and talks to us about it, which is fine. I mean, she's in that environment, so she's going to pick up on those things. But we don't want that to be necessarily what she focuses on. We want her to get a good education, not become like a Lutheran, so to speak. And our son, it's a different concern. So one of the kids that had gone, well, actually it's twin brothers who had gone from SARC's program to this same school. At the beginning of first grade, this was this year, the quote unquote lower functioning twin of that pair was kicked out of the school because he was too disruptive. He's not verbal. He uses a communication device to communicate, but he also struggles with inattentiveness and would basically be disruptive in class, and despite numerous attempts to redirect it. He had an aide. The principal approached them, I think, about a month into first grade and said, this isn't going to work out. And we're concerned that unless some of the issues that my son struggles with don't improve, we might be in the same boat next year, for all we know. We don't know that, but my wife is afraid of that possibility. And what is our backup plan if he can't continue to go to this school?
Yeah, of course, the flip side of that is also, unless the school is also improved in how they deal with autistic kids too.
And it's tricky with a private school, because they're not under any mandate to do so, unlike public schools. Public schools, they have to give your child an education, and a private school can basically, this isn't going to work out, you can take your kid elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's true.